Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in 1996. My name is Joel Crawford, and I'll walk into the story. It was the year 1996, summertime. My mother, she was dating a Squaxin Island tribal member. He was a gooey duck diver. So the Squaxin Island Indians are major divers. And we started going out to this island called Squaxin Island here in Washington State. It's a very, very, very desolate island. It's heavily forested. I don't know, for anybody that's been in the Pacific Northwest, our forests are deep. They are very, very thick. In some aspects, they're very, like a rainforest, being that we're on the coast. And so, you go out there and you can tell, it's endless. It's endless. So anyhow, we started going out to this island, and this island was it's very long, but, it's pretty tough to try to explain, in size comparison. It's a massive island. You couldn't cover it in a day. You probably couldn't cover it in a week. It's huge. And it's located kind of close to, Olympia, Washington, obviously capital of Washington State. Anyhow, we spent probably, I don't know, 5 times we went camping out on this island. And, on I believe it's the eastern side of this island, there was a small, basically it's like a little cove. Okay. And by this cove, there was a old ramshackle looking shack. It was a house at one point in time. And it was one of the very old Squaxin Island members' great-grandmother's home at some point. And I don't recall the time period when they actually lived there, but this house was still on the island, and this is the only man-made house or shack or anything on this island, because this island is nothing but forest, like deep forest. Anyhow, we had made plans to go out to the island, and it was me, my mother, my mother's boyfriend, and one of my very close friends, Chris. And the plan was we were going to go out there, and my mother's boyfriend was going to drop us at where we camp, and he was going to go and do some gooey duck diving for a couple hours. Okay. So we head out. It was a beautiful day. I remember the day. It was, like it is in Washington State. It was probably 65, 70, but it was nice. It was not raining, nothing like that. And we get out to our normal campsite, which is not really a campsite per se, but it's just a spot on the side of the island there next to this cove. And we hop off the boat, and my mother and my buddy Chris, and we kind of moved up to where we usually camp, which was probably about 40 feet in front of this old house. And this house sat back in the woods. It was relatively creepy, being I was 13, 14 years old at the time. And we kind of set up our camp. We had a couple tents, and then my mother's boyfriend, he took off to go do his gooey duck diving deal. And he said he'd be gone for 2 to 3 hours. And so this is, I believe it was in the afternoon time. And we get camp set up, get my mom's tent set up, get my tent set up, me, Chris, and myself. And there was about a, 30, 40 foot dock that basically was right at the that cove inlet that I kind of described. And it kind of went out about 30 feet off this cove, but it was paralleling the island. So it wasn't like it was going off of the island out into the water. It was kind of paralleling the island. And so if I was to walk up on this dock, I could stand there and look back into this cove. Okay. So Chris and I, we walk out after we set up our camp. And mind you, kind of stepping back, we had camped there a couple other times. I think it's 3 to 4 other times, and we had been out there with a lot of other tribal members, and they would talk a lot about the folklore. I don't know how they said it. I've heard it in other cryptid genres, but they call it, the hairy man, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, all these different names. And they talked very highly of these entities, and whether it's a physical creature or whether it's a spiritual creature, I really don't know. But they said this island, there was things on this island other than just packs of wild dogs, which were out there because I could hear them at night. There was other types of things on the island, and so being 14, I'm like, okay, you're trying to scare us, whatever. So that was kind of already, had been told to us, and so, kind of get us on edge. And so we, myself and Chris, we head out to this dock, and we're kind of hanging out on the dock. And again, this forest is very, very thick. I'm talking, you can't see into it very far, maybe 10, 15 feet. And we are looking down, like if I'm on the dock, I'm looking back into the island. And I'm looking over this cove, right? So there's a water inlet, and we're kind of like shooting down with this 22 caliber rifle that I brought with me. We're shooting at jellyfish, and we're having a good time. I think we were probably out there for an hour or whatever. And this is something we had done other times when we were out there at the island. And I don't remember if Chris noticed it or if I noticed it, but I know that I had the rifle in my hands, and Chris was off to the left of me at that time. And I don't know if I saw it first or if Chris saw it, but something caught one of our attention, and we called it out, and we're like, hey, what is that? And across this cove, and it would have been like 30 to 40 yards at the max, there was something large. It was bipedal. It was like a dark color. I could not see, to this day, I could not see a lot of detail of this thing. It was 10, maybe 15 feet inside the tree line. And it was not walking. It was gliding. It's really hard to explain. It was just basically like it was standing on ice almost. And it was like, there's a slight slope, right? And so this thing is just like sliding along in the woods. And, I was looking at it, and I couldn't really, understand like why this thing was moving this way. And so I took my rifle and I aimed my rifle, 30 yards behind it, and I popped off, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, 6 rounds. And this thing did absolutely nothing to acknowledge the fact that I was standing there shooting a 22 rifle in its vicinity. Obviously, I was not trying to shoot at it. I was just trying to get attention. So I was shooting, kind of upwards 30, 40 yards behind it. And it continued to just glide on past. And I would say, if I was to, I'm not going to put this thing at like 9 feet tall or anything like that. It was definitely larger than a man, but it was not a large, monstrous entity, right? And so it was just sliding by through the trees, and I could see it clear as day. Chris could see it clear as day. And it was paralleling basically us, headed towards my camp. So I'm like, okay, this thing is heading, down towards the tents where my mother is at. And I immediately took off. Chris took off with me. We ran down this dock, and we jumped off the dock, went down this trail that was basically, I was on the water line of the island, and this thing was coming in from the woods, paralleling this cove. And we get back to camp, and my mother, she hadn't seen anything or heard anything. And I was obviously I was frightened. I was scared. I was like, I don't know what this thing is, or I don't know if it's a very large man, or what the heck this thing is. So, that was the overall, visual aspect of whatever this was, whether it was Sasquatch or whether it was, whatever. The thing that really stuck out to me, the most, there's two things. And let me step back here real quick. I never really talked about this story to anyone. I did not tell anybody other than, obviously my mother. But I had run into my mother's boyfriend probably maybe 9 months ago, and I haven't seen him in 28 years. And talking to him basically triggered this memory. And in this memory, I was like, man, there was some weird stuff that I saw in this incident that did not make sense to me. The whole lack of reaction from this creature, being that I was shooting at it, and the way it moved, being that I haven't really thought about this in a long time, I was like, wow, did I make this up in my head? And so I immediately called Chris, my buddy that was with me that witnessed this. And I basically did an accusation audit with him on the phone, and I asked him questions to see what he would respond with regarding this incident, because he remembered the incident just like it was yesterday. But I wanted to see if these details that I had, if I had made them up over the last 28 years somehow subconsciously. And Chris's response was there was two things that were not okay with this: the way it moved and the way it never gave any sort of reaction to us being there. Zero reaction. And I was like, man, that really, I wasn't making this up in my mind. Like, I knew I had an incident, but these details were so abstract. They were so weird to the actual incident itself that, we really saw this. We really saw this thing. And so anyhow, kind of jumping back to the story, I just wanted to kind of touch on, what triggered the memory and why I hadn't talked about it in so long, and what brought it back. But the other thing that was, it was weird, but it wasn't like those two details, was the fact that there was no sound. There was no sound. This is obviously saltwater. It's a saltwater, surrounded, island. So you can use lots of smells and whatnot. I never smelt anything that was, lined up with all the Sasquatch, Bigfoot stories. But I heard zero sound from this thing. There was nothing coming from, its vicinity. It was silent. And again, it's paralleling the cove heading towards my camp. It is moving at a consistent, constant pace, and it's basically sliding across the forest floor. That's what it looked like to me. And again, the other thing was just going back to the fact that it showed zero interest in anything we were doing, almost as if we weren't even there with a rifle shooting, bullets at it. So, or not at it, but, in its direction. It did not turn its head. It did not turn its body. It did not duck. It did not change anything from what it was doing from when I first saw it to when we pulled the trigger on those 5 or 6 rounds. And so, I don't know. I've heard that, Sasquatch is, it's a creature, right? It's a missing link. Maybe it's it's an animal. It's half man. I've heard all these different stories. And, I've also heard that they're possibly interdimensional. And, over the years, I've done a lot of research myself. I always kind of thought that Sasquatch was possibly just some sort of animal we haven't really discovered, and I think it's intelligent. But over time, I have kind of changed my perspective of Sasquatch, and I think that there's a lot of stuff in this world that we do not necessarily understand. And I think this is one of them. I think there is definitely a possibility that it could be interdimensional. I think that, one person commented on my experience on one of these social media pages, and he said, it sounds like the Sasquatch possibly was in between dimensions. Like it was kind of here and it kind of wasn't. And that really made me think about what I was witnessing, being that there was no response. But it was definitely a solid creature or a solid entity. It was not transparent in any way. It was black or very, very dark brown, a solid body, but that was one of the things that really kind of keyed off the whole, possibly being interdimensional. So yeah, that is my 1996 experience that me and Chris kind of went through, and it really changed some perspective for me, being that I never really spent a lot of time thinking about it after all those years until just now. I did have a second experience. I definitely spend a lot of time in the woods. I love the Pacific Northwest. I like the overland. I like to do a lot of those different things. And I enjoy going out and taking a hike and looking at ghost towns. And a buddy of mine last year, in fact, had went up to a well-known ghost town in the Cascade Mountains called Wellington. And it's an old train town that's no longer there. And we camped for the weekend, and it is deep in the Cascade Mountains. There's nobody around. Again, very, very deep in the woods. And we were camping at the location of the original town. And we were sitting there, and it was probably, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the morning. It was about the same time last year, it was September-ish that we were there. And we were sitting outside the camper 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, just relaxing. And there was a bird that was continuing to chirp every 2 seconds. Just chirp, chirp. And it was going on for probably 20 minutes. And out of nowhere, there was this, it's hard to call it a scream, because when I think of scream, it's like high pitched. This was not a scream. This was a yell, like a very, people always say this guttural, right? Like it's deep, like a deep coming from your belly, right? Scream that lasted probably 3-4 seconds. And, it wasn't an elk. Elks they kind of yodel and I don't know, they bugle, right? It wasn't a cougar or nothing like that. I've heard all that. It was something that was very big, obviously, had a lot of lung capacity, but it screamed good 4 seconds and then stopped, and everything was completely silent. And including myself, I had stopped breathing because I was like, wow, that was very, very intense. I, again, didn't see anything. I was a little unnerved, but it was pretty crazy to hear something with the lung capacity this thing had. So, yeah, that's my my 2 experiences. The first one was definitely a little bit more intense, but there you go.
My Bigfoot sighting happened 32 years ago in 1992 in the fall. My name is Marsha, and it was late at night, and I was driving out to Henley Field, Mississippi on the Harry Soanes Road, a little 2-lane road with no line down the middle. Oak trees hanging over the roads, and as I rounded a curve, there he was sitting in the middle of the road. And I hit my brakes. I wasn't going that fast. And I went out there a lot. And anyway, he was big and dark and hairy, and was sitting down. He was between 3 and 4 feet sitting down. About 3 foot tall, maybe a few inches more. He stood up, and in 2 leaps, he was off that road into those woods by the Bowley Creek. And I went on down and got to my friend's house, and he laughed me off, saying that what it was. It was probably a bear. I said, I know what I saw. And he was dismissing it like a lot of people do. And the years passed. He wasn't on my mind, Bigfoot. And we have a group in Washington Parish, Louisiana, and the Southeast Louisiana, Mississippi Bigfoot group that I decided to join. And I went on my first camp out with them in Pearl River County, where this sighting happened, on the Pearl River back roads where you could put your boat in at, off Highway 43/26. And I'm camping out with Eden Boudreaux and Sherry Lewiston and Courtney Marquis, and my grandson Jude Smith was with me. And we had a fire going, and everybody was talking about their experiences. And they wanted to know what I had seen, what made me be interested in the subject. And I told them how it went down. And Sherry asked me, did I go that way often? And I said, matter of fact, all the time. Whenever he called, I went. And she said, well, it had seen you before, and it knew you were not a threat. It knew the sound of your car, like a dog. Your dog hears your car coming down the road, and they run out to meet you. The Bigfoot knew the sound of my car. And she said it was probably a juvenile messing with you. And he knew you were not a threat. So he ran out on the road and sat down and waited for me to round that curve. And there I saw him, headlights on bright. I know what I saw, big and dark and hairy. And what else stands up and takes 2 leaps and is in the woods? And I live outside of Bogalusa, outside the city limits, next to a local paper mill's big forest. It's been there forever, as long as I can remember. And I'm 70 years old. And I was unloading groceries one day. This is about 4 years ago. My mother was still alive. And I'm living with her because she couldn't stay alone out here in this house. And I'm unloading my groceries, and I hear a Bigfoot howl in the forest right here near me. And once you hear that howl, you know what it is. Nothing compares to it. Chills got on me, and I said, oh, my God, right here at me, Now, I knew there was one further on down the pipeline. That's a mean one that had the man doesn't want to be identified. He contacted another member of the group for help. He had a pit bull chained to pine tree, and he had one that would stand on the power line in the tree line and would harass him and would beat on his house at night and harassed him. Well, one day he went out to check on his dog, and the dog's head had been pulled off. And this is 9 miles from me, down the power line. The thing killed the man's dog, and then 2 days later, they said he brought the body back and threw the body back in the yard. A little more harassment. Well, that happened out here. And my grandson, he's now 14, and this was probably 3 years ago this happened, and he was here with me. And I have a scooter I bought for my mama to get around on outside the yard, a big one. And he likes to ride it. He goes too fast on it, and he knows not to go out when he goes out on the road, down the lane, out on the road. Don't go past a certain neighbor's house. Don't go down that hill. He slipped off, and he went into that forest, walking down that dirt road. And he left the scooter by the swing gate and crawled under it and went down that road. And when he came home, he said, "Nana, I got something to tell you." And he said, "I was walking down the road. I was gone pretty far, and a big limb was thrown at him and hit him in the ankle. And through his socks, it skinned his ankle about the size of a 50-cent piece." He said, "I promise you, I'll never go down that road again." And I just recently asked him, would he camp out with me on the edge of that road? He said, "No, ma'am. No." Because I would camp out down there. It's not that far from the house. Put up a tent. And he said, "No, ma'am. Wouldn't do it." I've also been, we have a new state park in Washington Parish called Bochita River State Park. The river winds around it. And I went to the river with Eden. We went out to the camp, to the state park, and we walked out to the bend in the river. We hiked out there, and we're watching the water in the curve of the river flowing. And all of a sudden, way in the distance, a Bigfoot howled. Eden said, "Did you hear that?" About that time, another one closer to us answered that one. And we're looking at each other. And then the first one howled again, answering it back. And we said to ourselves, it's probably saying there's humans near, the way they were communicating or whatever. Well, we walked on out there and went back to her truck and rode around to where she had been one time before, where it's primitive camping, and she smelled one in the bushes. One of them was hiding in the blinds that they make, and she smelled it. She knew it was there. Well, we went up in there. We walked up in there, and somebody had left a log by where they had a campfire ring, and we walked around looking for footprints and looking for blinds. And I went up to the bushes, and in a blind, inside that one of those blinds that I found, and I took pictures of it, was a blind for a little small one, like for a toddler size. Inside the big blind was a little blind, but they had put it for a baby or toddler age Bigfoot. And I tried to take a picture of that inside the bushes, but I was successful finding that. And then Eden, she took me to where Leonard Skinner's plane crashed in Osaka, Mississippi. And that was very interesting. Then we left there and we went to an old cemetery at the end of the road in Osaka that they had camped out before and had seen orbs. And I think they said they saw a dog man. And we walked around in the cemetery looking for footprints, and then we went around behind it. And when she was there the time before, she put some blue marbles under the pine straw. Well, the marbles were discovered and the pine straw was disturbed, and there was the blue marbles. And I took pictures of that. But to the left of the marbles was a big footprint. And I said, "Look, Eden." She said, "You got one." So I snapped a couple of shots of it. And that was my first footprint to find. This just becomes an obsession and joy. And I don't think I want to see another one, but if it's a surprise, it's going to be when you're least looking for it when you're going to see one. I wasn't expecting that night to see anything. And then, boom, it changes your life. People laugh at you when you tell them about this stuff. And I said, "Listen, I know what I saw. That's all that matters. I know what I saw." And there's too many people that have sightings and seen them and smelled them and heard them that know it also. But it's just something I'm enjoying doing. I'm ready for camping out. The weather's gotten cooler. It's time to camp out again. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I can talk about. There's UFOs. People are starting to see around here again. And years ago at my mama's other home, what her and daddy had built on the banks of it was a slough of the Pearl River, inherited land from my grandparents to my mom. They heard a noise one night. Mama was sewing at the bedroom window of my brother's bedroom. That's where she had her sewing machine. And something howled in the edge of that creek that she's never heard before. And she said, Marsha, I shut that bedroom window and made sure the house was locked. Because it was a dead end, down a dead end lane where that house was at, surrounded by that swamp, by those woods. Whatever it was enough to scare her enough to close that window. And I don't blame her. And then her and Todd heard some noises that night, and they went outside, and hovering up in the air over their house was two round objects lit up, hovering there with lights all around them. And she said all of a sudden one of them went one way and the other went the other way. So that was my mom's little experiences thrown in. She definitely believed in Bigfoot, and she died at 89. This October will be 4 years ago. So she knew it was something to it also. My other family laughs at me, but I don't care. But I hope y'all enjoyed listening to my little stories, the things that I experienced. That's about all I have to say on the matter, other than once you're bit by the bug, you're bit.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, bucking eight bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something coming backwards in double time, getting to the soul in this tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting to the soul in the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems drumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. mama's best sweet tea. Got the sound